When we're learning hold on, computer froze up here a second. Yeah, we're going to be learning a talk of the Rebbe from Chai Elul Yud. And in the early years, it's a very, very powerful for bringing. So it's a Sicha from Chai Elul Yud 1950. The Rebbe is, again, 6 months before the Rebbe officially accepts leadership. Oidus Chai Elul, with regard to Chai Elul, Kosuk Foigdish Baruch my father writes, again, Chai Elul is the birthdays of the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe, both on the same day, the 18th of El. Sheyem Heiledes Shel Merenu Baal Shem Tov Admar Zaken. Chai El, the 18th of El, is the birthdays of our teacher, the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe. B'Alpi Yidur is known. Shebiyem Heiledas Shel Adam, on the day of a person's birthday, Mazali Goiver, the person's mazel is strong. It's a famous idea. That person's mazel is strong on the day of their birthday, the day they were born. The Rebbe says he doesn't quote it, but he says there's a Yershami to support this idea that the mazel of a person, he or she, on their birthday is strong. Movement, that's why people give blessings to people on their birthday, and it's a time for reflection, etc. Movement, Shebachai Elo, Naseh Hagvaris, Hakoiches, Shomerena Bachan Vadmar Zaken. So if it's the birthdays of the Baal Shem Tov, our teachers, the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe, surely their Inyan, which is represented by the mazel, is going very strong, and therefore they have a powerful day, even more than the rest of the year, to be effective in their inyanim, the things that matter to them, or the things that is the kavanah for them. The ideas of the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe. My father, the previous Rebbe, explains that what was the idea, what was the inyan, what was the purpose, so to say, what was the mission of the Baal Shem Tov? Baal Shem Tov solo derech l'chol echad ve'echad Yisrael. The Baal Shem Tov paved a derech, a way for every single Jewish individual, not just Chassidim, every Jew. Not just the scholars, even the most simple of people. Ahavas Hashem. The Baal Shem Tov paved the path for avoid that every single person, even though a simple person, could serve Hashem. And that's what the Alter Baal Shem Tov did. What did the Alter Rebbe add to that? He showed he showed how, especially by the Tanya, and in general through Chabad Chassidus, how every single individual, including the simple of the most simples, could serve Hashem. Means the Baal Shem Tov paved the way that you can do it, but sometimes when you can do it, but the question is how. The how, or the possibility, was the Baal Shem Tov, but the how, that was with the Alter Rebbe. The Makam Achar, in another place, there's an explanation. The Rebbe quotes this later. We're going to see this in Parshas Vayetze. Baal Shem Tov Hemet Sulam, the Baal Shem Tov put up the ladder. Sha'akol, that every individual, he or she, Gama Nosha Apshutim, the most simple person, Yechol Allah Silaf, could elevate spiritually higher. And the Rebbe says in other places, this is the same ladder of Yaakov Avinu's dream. So the ladder of Yaakov's dream that was all the way back from the beginning of time, so to say, of our birth, the Baal Shem Tov put it back up that you could climb that ladder. The Alter Rebbe shows us how to climb the ladder. You have a ladder, you don't know how to climb it. The Alter Rebbe shows us how does a person climb the ladder. So the two explanations, there's two things given. One explanation is this: the Baal Shem Tov paved the path of avodah for every person. The Alter Rebbe showed how to go through the path of avodah. And the second one is that the Baal Shem Tov put up the ladder for elevation. The Alter Rebbe showed how to climb that ladder. Even though the talk of the Friedrich Rebbe, the Rebbe is quoting the talk of the previous Rebbe, doesn't say exactly what is this path or this ladder. There's a movement that's understood anyways. According to what my father, the previous Lubavitch Rebbe writes, what is the eating of the Baal Shem Tov? And surely that's how one does avodah, is Ahavas Hashem, Ahavas HaTorah, Ahavas Yisrael. The three loves of loving God, loving Torah, and loving your fellow Jew. Sometimes we say the brought in the reverse. Ahavas Yisrael, loving your fellow Jew, then loving Torah, and then loving Hashem. Either we look at it from above down, starting with loving Hashem, loving Torah, loving your fellow Jew, or from below up, loving your fellow Jew, loving Torah, loving Hashem. These three loves, again, incidentally, this is the Rebbe talks about these three loves when he gives his mission statement in the Farbrengen of the 10th of Shvat. Ahavas Yisrael, Ahavas HaTorah, and Ahavas Hashem, these three loves are not separate loves. They're connected, and essentially they're one. Mishnah, as it says, brought down in the Mishnah, in Ahavas Perek Gimel, if a person is a kind of person, he or she, that Ruach HaBris, the people are gravitate towards you, or they feel kind, they feel good around you. You give off a good aura with people socially, is a sign that Ruach HaMakom Nechimenu, that God is happy with you. If you're a person who's having a challenge with socially, Ein Ruach HaMakom Nechimenu means that there's something there that you need to rectify, that God's also not feeling the comfortable, so to say, around you. It's not talking about that the Ruach of the spirit of the wise people don't find you comforting, or the rich people, or the socialites. The language is the bris. The bris is, why does he call it the Ruach of the bris, which is important. It's important to point that the Rebbe is making, is that a person may think, well, if I'm not liked by the important people, maybe that means God doesn't like me. The tell is on the bris, the simple person. How does the simple person approach you? If you have a good common language with the simple person, like the Baal Shem Tov did, you have a good common relationship with the simple person. Maybe it doesn't show itself as much with the scholars or the wealthy people or the socialites, but that's a good tell to know that God is with those people as well, because God likes simple people. As the Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya chapter 32, what does the rabbis mean when they say Oives Abris, love Abrius? Abris means a creation. They bring them closer to the Torah. Even though if this person is very far from God and His Torah, the only compliment, the only thing you could describe them, means they have achieved nothing besides just being a creation of God. They have no other unique characteristics or qualities or achievements besides being a creation of Hashem. As the Gemara teaches us, Rebbe met a person that he was very ugly, obviously more ugly inside than outside. He says, oh, how ugly is this person? So the person says, you don't like me? You find me ugly? To complain to the person who made me, or to the to the mass, to the worker, or the skilled person who made me, the skillster who made me. We're not talking about a person, we're talking about God. And the Alter Rebbe continues that even a person that's only quality is that they're a creation of God, a Jewish person, is you have to bring them even with the ropes, tie them in with the ropes of love, the Kavod and Torah of Avodas Hashem, to bring them close to Torah and service of God. So to here, that even if we're just a common person, that they're only just a creation. It says, if a person has a good relationship, and people that are the simple people find you pleasing and pleasant, it's a sign God finds you pleasant as well. But if the simple person doesn't find you pleasant, is a sign that and therefore the Baal Shem Tov's whole idea was the love of a partial yid, of a simple person. This is understood. If you're a person who's lacking in love of your fellow Jew, and people don't find you pleasant, you're not a loving person. Then it's not that it's not only that God dislikes you, doesn't find you pleasant because why don't you have Ahavas Yisrael? You don't even have Ahavas Hashem and Ahavas HaTorah. You can't have proper Ahavas Yisrael if you don't have if you can't have proper Ahavas Hashem and Ahavas HaTorah if you don't have Ahavas Yisrael. You can't love God and Torah and not loving your fellow Jew. And it's a sign that God doesn't find you pleasant, not just because of your lack of Ahavas Yisrael, because because also you don't have the Ahavas Hashem, you don't have love for God and love for Torah. For Pratis Yosef, the Rebbe continues. Sometimes a person loves God, and that can bring you to disconnect his body, to be alone. In general, just to be a person who's a loner, you just want to do your thing with God, and specifically from simple people. Simple people demand too much. It's too separate. You're too separate from them, so you have no common language. But that's the Ahavas HaTorah. So to a person only has love for Torah. Also, that's not so good. You could become egotistic. You become special to yourself. Well, you don't feel anyone's worthy of your company or them of your company. Therefore, it's not good enough to have Ahavas Hashem and Ahavas HaTorah, because those two things could lead to unholy and inappropriate behavior. Whether it's just to be cut off from people, especially common people, or to find other people, to be feeling you're elevated from people. Ahavas Yisrael must be Ahavas Yisrael part of the three chains of connection. Nesi'im is more than that. Not just that you need all three, but if you don't have proper Ahavas Yisrael, it's a sign that you clearly lack in loving God and loving Torah. It can't possibly. Love like the Rebbe brings that in Hayom Yom. You love what the person you love loves. God, you love God, and God loves a Jewish person. Ahavas Yisrael, they send us chizuk ba'Ahavas HaTorah poel, upay ela she'Ahavas Hashem ti'amitis. When you have proper Ahavas Yisrael, it strengthens your love for Torah, and it affects that your Ahavas Hashem, your love for God, is true. Ahavas Hashem ba'Ahavas HaTorah poel me'vim l'dei Ahavas Yisrael. And if you had real love for God and real love for Torah, then surely you would have love for your fellow Jew. So therefore, the Rebbe says that what is you want to know what the path of the Baal Shem Tov is? That he paved the path for every person. It's based on the rules of the three loves: Ahavas Hashem, Ahavas HaTorah, and Ahavas Yisrael, or the way you go the other way around. So comes Chai Elul, and the mission statement and the idea, the avoda of the Baal Shem Tov was the three loves. Is even if throughout the year you were lacking in one of these three loves, or all or part, and their interaction, their connection between each other. Chai Elul comes at the month of Elul, the 18th of Elul, the birthdays of the holy of our teachers, the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe. That's their day and the strength of what matters to them. And in this case, it's talking about Ahavas Hashem, Ahavas HaTorah, and Ahavas Yisrael. Love of God, love of Torah, love of your fellow Jew. Therefore, you could draw energy. If you couldn't have, if for some reason you were lacking in one of the three loves, or all of the three loves, it comes the day of the Baal Shem Tov's birthday. Surely it's a time to draw energy, and as soon as it gives you empowerment. And the Ahavas Hashem is to have the three loves and that they're connected to each other. What Parshas Rebbe says, to put it simple, Shenasis ha'akara b'moyach. You have to recognize in your brain, and in feeling it in your heart. It's not possible to divide between loving your fellow Ahavas Yisrael, Ahavas HaTorah, and Ahavas Hashem, loving your fellow Jew, loving Torah, loving God. Because they're one, just like the Jewish people in general, Torah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu are one. So to the Ahavas Yisrael, Ahavas Hashem, and Ahavas HaTorah has to be one. That's number uno. That's the first Sicha. The Rebbe continues. In Yomim Shal Yud Beis Yomim Chai Elul Ad Rosh Hashanah, we know that there's 12 days from the 18th of Elul till Rosh Hashanah. You count the 18th, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. Elul only has 29 days. So the last 18 days, last 12 days, starting from Chai Elul, including Chai Elul, is 12 days left to Rosh Hashanah, and there's a significance to this statement. My father explains, you take advantage, and each one of these 12 days. You take each one of the days, starting from Chai Elul. Chai Elul is the day you think about primarily, how did we do in the month of Tishrei? Because the 12 months correspond to the last 12 days of the year. And in the 19th of Elul, you think about, you concentrate on the general cheshbon and nefesh of how you're doing, but you focus specifically on Mar Cheshbon. And the 20th is on Kislev, 21st is on Tevis, etc. Later it's brought down that the same thing that Arizal says, the same thing applies to the 7 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, because if you don't count Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, in the Seres Yimei there's really 7 days in between. That's a discussion itself. Why is it called 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? It's explained in the Maimarim. But over here, the point is there's 7 days from the 3rd through the 10th to the 9th. So you count 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If you count 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So those are the 7 days of the week. So that's when you're supposed to make a cheshbon nefesh. How was your Sunday? How was your Monday? How was your Tuesday, etc. So we have to start the first day of the cheshbon. You have to make an evaluation specifically on the 18th of Elul. That's how you have to think. How did I do Tishrei? How did I do Rosh Hashanah? How did I do in my 10 days of Tshuva? How did I do in Yom Kippur? How did I do my preparation for Sukkot? How was my Simcha in Sukkot? How was my Simcha in Simchas Torah? How was my Sukkah? How was my Lulav? How was my being a host to guests? That's in the Chai Elul. We focus on the Tishrei. So they're bad. So therefore, if you're saying that the month of Chai Elul is the Chodesh HaCheshbon, the month that a person evaluates how Tishrei was, so now the Rebbe says, here we're sitting here, Tafshin Yud, 1950, which is when the Friedrich Rebbe was alive the year before, 1949. We spent Tishrei with the Rebbe. Again, this is again, we're talking heavy hiskashrus sichas. The one for Chai Elul is particularly hiskashrus. Means our connection, our undivided and uncompromising connection, and giving ourselves over to the Rebbe. These are what these early sichas are about. One of them. So here he says that in Chodesh Elul of the year before, means that the year Tafshin Yud, which was the end of 49. The Rebbe himself has to make an evaluation. How did the Rebbe, as a Rebbe, to his obligation to Chassidim, how did he do to his obligation to Chassidim? And the Rebbe explains that. I mean, these are broad words. That the Rebbe has to make a cheshbon nefesh. The Rebbe has to see, how did I perform as a Rebbe to Chassid from the month of Tishrei? The Rebbe says, last year we were with the Rebbe. And the same thing applies every year. It applies even to this year. The Rebbe says that when it comes to Tishrei, he has to give brachas every year to everyone. How did the Rebbe's brachas do for us? And the Rebbe has to make that evaluation. The Rebbe starts, there are those. The Rebbe scared. There may be all the guarantees and assurances and brachas that they got from the Rebbe the year before and every year. So while he was alive, he had an obligation. Once he passed away, Meisim Chavshi is the concept. Once he passes away, he's free. He's free from his obligations. Like a person's free from mitzvahs. That's only about normal people, regular people. That doesn't apply to every person. The Rebbe quotes this many times in the early years. It's brought down that the righteous person, he or she who's considered alive, even in their death. They don't go through that transition where I told it to you when I was alive. I have no obligation now. I'm a free person now. I passed away. Things have changed. No, tzaddik doesn't work like that. They're not like regular people who pass away. The regular person has been liberated, so to say, and free of their obligations. And even after tzaddik passes away, especially if he has an obligation to a specific chassid, specifically if he has an obligation for a specific bracha, he has all the obligations to the chassid as he had before. So powerful words. Well, Pisa is the bar. Based on this, we can explain. The Talmud teaches that after Rabbeinu Kodesh, the author of the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, from the house of Hillel, he literally would come to his house even after he passed away. The whole Erev Shabbos, every Friday night, the Kiddush Hayom, and he would make Kiddush for his family until one of the servants talked about it and he stopped coming. He would make Kiddush for them, and they wouldn't have to make their own Kiddush. His wife, his children, whoever it is he was making Kiddush for, they listened to his Kiddush and he was mighty them. Which that's incredible. Why? The halacha says if someone doesn't have, a woman can't make a kiddush for a man. Why? Because if a person doesn't have an obligation to make kiddush, you can't be mighty someone else. So how would Rebbe be able to be mighty other people in kiddush if he didn't have an obligation? If you're saying a person who passes away is chafshi of mitzvahs, because that doesn't apply to Rebbe. He's not your regular person that's no longer obligatory to make kiddush. Shem chafshim and mitzvahs, they're free of mitzvahs. And the Yeshel Achiv the kiddush yom, he has the mitzvah so much so that he can be makayim it in such a way that he can be mighty acherim, he can be mighty the living. Rabbi Rabbeinu Kodesh passed away. He's buried where he's buried over there in the north. He would come every Friday night from the afterlife, coming in the form of a person, and he would literally make kiddush and be mighty the family. Well, Pisa moving. It's like it says, Rebbe said, keep my bed warm, keep my bed made, my table, because I'm still here. While Pisa moving, people get all worked up when you say a tzaddik never passed away. This is not a new thing. It's Rabbeinu Kodesh, the Gemara says that. Sefer Chassidim says that it was nice to the Mapi Halacha. While Pisa moving, this understood. There's another story that's brought down in the Sefer Emek HaMelech. Those who live in Eretz Yisrael love this story. It's called Avram Avinu's Shul. That Shir for us, Avram Avinu, Kasiru the Minyan. It's a famous story that's told. There was a Yom Kippur in Hebron, and there's everyone goes to Hebron today. There's a shul they call it Avram Avinu's Shul, and it's called that because of the story that they had 9 people. They were missing a minyan. They were very disturbed. Why don't they have a minyan? A person showed up. They didn't know who he was. He stayed the entire davening. He counted as the 10th person. And it turns out he was Avram Avinu. Avram came down from the afterlife to make sure that in his city where he's buried, there's going to be a minyan. Never that he was counted as the minyan. And it wasn't like he made a mistake. Avram Avinu is not like a regular person. He still counts as a minyan. Shehem Chavshin mitzvahs. He's not free of mitzvahs. So what does this mean? I'll be able to stop soon. I don't think we're going to make it to the end of the Sicha. So what does this mean, the Rebbe says? The idea is, when it comes to a general soul, like a Rebbe, specifically Rebbe, that what was their whole purpose in this world while they were alive? They gave themselves totally over for their students, those who were connected to them, who call Yisrael for the whole Jewish people. Ain't shum see but studies you can't make if that's the whole existence was to be there for Chassidim and for Mikasharim and for Klal Yisrael. That never calls it see but studies. There can't be any side happening like the passing of a tzaddik. Shetuchal freedom could separate from that connection. Minyan which is their primary purpose. The primary purpose of a Rebbe is take care of Chassidim. I see but studies something that happened passing away that can't get in the way of the primary obligation of a Rebbe to take care of Chassidim, and therefore there's no such thing as the Rebbe is not obligated anymore to keep the brachas going. Like the Alter Rebbe has in Tanya, tzaddik is still with his flock. That they're found in this world and they have obligations. Like Torah mitzvahs, that even there means the tzaddiks congregants, the tzaddiks chassidim that are in this world, and they have to do Torah mitzvahs. The Rebbe still is obligated, to help, to show them how they can do the mitzvahs. You can't say that the Rebbe doesn't care about my parnasa, the Rebbe doesn't care about my gesund, the Rebbe doesn't care about my chassidishkeit, my yiddishkeit, because he passed away. If I'm a chassid of the Rebbe, we're a chassid of the Rebbe, and I have things that I have to take care of, the Rebbe is obligated to help me take care of them. He can even take care of what the congregation needs. Rebbe made kiddush. No such thing as now that he passed away, they're not obligated. They're free from their obligations. They have the same obligations. But and even on a stronger level. They can perform even better because they're not limited to body. That even a tzaddik, that the highest level, still is limited when he's in a body. Now that he's out of a body, he could help a chassid much more, a yid much more. Now that he has the limitations of the body. And this understood when the Alter Rebbe, and the Rebbe, even after the passing, the Rebbe makes the cheshbon Chai Elul al Chodesh Tishrei. How did my brachas work? And he benched every one of us in a Shana Tov Masukah. From the year before, notwithstanding of the passing. He's obligated, and he does. As before, like the years before, the nation of time, 2-3 years. The 30 years. Once he becomes a Rebbe, and he gives himself over to Talmidim, to students. He has an obligation. Let's see if I can pull off another Sif. Yeah, let's just finish this. Sif. The Rebbe says, what's now? So now that we know that the Rebbe has an obligation, so what is the cheshbon? What's the calculation the Rebbe has to make about how do we do as a Rebbe? With the evaluation that the Rebbe makes about himself on the 18th of Elul, and that's connected specifically to the month of Tishrei. Like we said, every one of the 18 days corresponds to another month. So the first of the 18 days is the month of Tishrei. All the blessings that the Rebbe gave us. That he gave us last Tishrei, he has to make a cheshbon. How did my brachas work for my chassid? The Frierdiker Rebbe used to say, he never went, like he says, bankrupt. He never went bankrupt. Bankrupt means chas v'shalom, God forbid. If he had obligations, he paid them. If he gives a bracha to someone, the person may say, "Oh, maybe the Rebbe overreached. He gave a bracha he couldn't perform. He never went bankrupt on a chassid." If that's the case, his brachas are going to come. The Rebbe, if he promised, for sure, there's nothing stopping the bracha from happening. He wouldn't promise if he couldn't do it. He doesn't just make a promise. There's one condition as a chassid. You have to stay connected to the Rebbe. The Amunah, you have to believe now. Tafshin Pei Zayin. Tafshin Pei Vav. Shagam Achrev Yochel Amal Bevad Yamal Kol Brachaisav. That the Rebbe's brachas can and will happen. What does the Frierdiker Rebbe once spoke? What does it mean to have bad thoughts or foreign thoughts when you daven? Yizak is like a person. Shemakish Al Delos HaShamelch. He knocks on the window of the king. And the king comes and opens the window. You knocked on his window. I said, the door, sorry. You walk away from the king. What is the example? First organize, praise Hashem, and then you ask. You can't just say, praise Hashem and not ask. Like as we learned in today's Torah, you make all the achanis for davening. It's like knocking on the king's door. But Tefillah atzmi here, eis ratzin shemach b'seches das. When you daven, the king opens the door. And when you're not thinking properly davening, I was like, because if you knocked on the door, you went to the mikveh, you gave tzedakah, and then you walked away. The king opened the door to give you what you want, what you asked him for. So then it says, we all went to the mikveh, like we learned this morning. That's one of the 3 achanis, going to the mikveh. We're singing it by Fabrengen and Chai Elul. That's what the Rebbe wants, the Fabrengen Chai Elul. When the Rebbe's shul is Harizek, it's like we're knocking on the Rebbe's door. Don't get up and walk away. You knock on the Rebbe's door, let the Rebbe give you a bracha. On the contrary, take advantage of the opportunity. We stay even stronger connected. How? And how do you get connected? Studying his Torah, to imagine and to visualize his image. That's why we look at pictures of the Rebbe. We have hanging pictures of the Rebbe. Watch videos of the Rebbe. Call whoever saw the Rebbe. Yitzhak la'atzmei sur spanav. We should try to picture his face as you saw him. Mikol shekir mikal chaim mashkas Gemara. The Gemara tells us, Shrabeinu Hakadosh our Rebbe Amr had the machtedar mechavre the chazis le'Meir mi'achra v'ila chazis mikamei. Rebbe says that what made him so, gave him an advantage, that he saw the back of Meir. Had I seen his face, I would even be better off. So if you've seen the Rebbe's face, how could you not visualize that? Someone was holding the staff of Meir in the north, in the Galil, and that gave him understanding. By day is kashrus Rebbe. When we stay connected to the Rebbe, Vivadi is smalak over chaysev, then the Rebbe is going to fulfill all the blessings that he promised us, and we're going to have this year still all the brachas that the Rebbe, that maybe we didn't, we have 18 days, now we're holding Yud, you have 20 days, that the Rebbe's brachas are surely going to come true, and surely for next year, for Shana Tov Musafir, to the biggest bracha, Mashiach Tzidkenu, will continue, as Hashem, in the next few days.